A wise Chinese proverb tells us that the inferior doctor treats the actual sickness, but the superior doctor prevents the sickness altogether. That's why our team was so excited when asked to consult for eSmart Health, an initiative by HKT that embraces these ideals. My name is Caroline, and with my teammates Michael, Rachel, and Michael, we're excited to begin a discussion on how eSmart Health can accelerate its current momentum into long-term growth. Over the last 6 years, you've had several initiatives to launch eSmart Health, and each of them played to a different market. You had an initiative that catered straight to the consumer. You had one that catered to the elderly care centers as well as nursing homes, and one that launched in schools using the temperature capabilities of eSmart Health. Unfortunately, the problem with each of these initiatives is that none of the markets that they entered truly appreciated the full value of eSmart Health. For the first initiative, the problem was that the consumer just wasn't ready for these products. There was no demand for the product. For the second initiative, the B2B initiative, even if and when eSmart Health was able to capture the entire market, it wouldn't be enough for HKT's requirement of 20% ROI, and that's a huge inhibitor. For the most recent initiative, moving into schools was a fantastic move because the government set you up so well with their requirement of temperature readings at the beginning of each school day. Unfortunately, with this initiative, you hit a dead end. There was no demand or requirement for any of the future initiatives that eSmart Health offers. That's why today we're excited to propose a market entry that does appreciate the full suite of benefits that eSmart Health has. We'd like to propose a partnership with health insurance providers. You can see in our flowchart of this ecosystem that the way it would work is that HKT would provide medical devices to insurance companies. Insurance companies would provide them to the companies, and companies would provide the suite of medical devices to the end consumer. The money would flow out from the company, and the data collected from the employees would flow up to HKT, and then through the cloud-based service be accessible to the insurance companies. And we'll talk about why each of the stakeholders involves benefits. And that's really what is the strongest part of this recommendation, is that this market appreciates all of the stakeholders, and each of the stakeholders receives a benefit, exactly addressing your mission of combining and uniting all stakeholders in an initiative through innovation and technology that creates a better environment for the healthcare system. Thank you for making time to be with us today. Today we're excited to begin our proposal on how our program, which we call Deliver Health, through eSmart Health, will engage all of our stakeholders. We'll drive short-term benefits through our 20% ROI goal, and we'll drive long-term growth for eSmart Health to be sustainable throughout the future. At this time, I'd like to invite my teammate Michael to begin by discussing how each stakeholder involved benefits from our program, Deliver Health.
Well, thank you very much. So as Caroline has mentioned, the key point in here is the insurance provider. If we don't get the insurance provider to buy into this program, there's nothing we can do. So first I want to talk about how the insurance provider would benefit from this program and why they eventually want to participate in this program. There are three benefits that I want to touch on. The first one I would talk about is how the claim can be reduced. Now when the claim getting reduced, that also means that the insurance company will actually get more profit. So if you look on your left side, you will see that when we have a health tracking device, which is what eSmart Health provide, with this device, it can actually increase physical activity by 26%, and that will lead to a lower risk of health. Now with that, there's another research showing that the more healthy people are, the less medical expense they spend, which kind of makes sense. Now if you look on the right side, you can see a chart with the horizontal side being the reduction in claim, and the vertical side being the increase in profit. You can see with 5% of reduction, the profit for insurance company can increase by 50%. Now you may think that is a really huge number, and let me explain why the number is huge. The claim actually right now is 66% of the earned premium. So it means that every $1 you get from your customer, you will lose 66 cents later to pay the claim. Now we're able to reduce that big amount of cost just by 5%. That will actually bring a lot to profit. And I would love to talk to you more about this if you have any question on the calculation. Now there are other two benefits that I want to touch on. The first one is on the risk management. There are three reasons that we can see that it will give the insurance company a better risk management. The first one is the risk-based pricing, which means that now if we know more about the risk, then we'll actually be able to So you can ask any question if you have any question.
I certainly do. So you talked about the engagement with the insurance companies. That has been tried. I just checked. It's in your briefing and everything. But so could you tell me why you think it failed the first time round and what we need to do to make it more successful?
Is your question more about like the first time we...
Yeah, the first time round. Why did it fail?
So we approached the customer, right? Just directly to the
insurance
customer.
companies.
Oh, the insurance company. Yeah.
Yeah, so we'd like to reference, we'll address this in a little bit as well, the precedent case. We found an example from the United States of a middle-sized insurance company called CICC. And they launched a similar initiative recently where they took kind of a wearable technology, so a little bit different there, and they give it to the employees of their clients, and the buy-in was incredible. They had 83% buy-in participation, voluntary participation, and the statistics that they received were fantastic. They had a 50% reduce in risk for obesity. They had a 10% reduce in risk for cardiovascular health. So I think the precedent case for that is one of the reasons why we were so excited about this idea. Another reason being because I guess the excitement that we have for the fact that all of the stakeholders benefit from this plan. Each one has a different motivation and a different reason why they would buy into this program. And that, I think that the cause for buy-in is really why we believe that this plan will be successful.
To add on to that, so you addressed earlier that the reason the program failed was because the end consumer and the end user of the device did not have the kind of awareness and the need to be able to use the device. Our recommendation shifts the incentive structure to be on the end user and shifts it away from them and onto the insurance provider and the company to incentivize them, which is where we're recommending that we'll be able to drive further sales and further usage of the device. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, although the first time around we thought it was the insurance company that didn't have the leap of faith to go ahead and do this sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of to show another reason why that, like the insurance company now is more buying into this idea of increasing the physical activity or increasing the health of the customer is from the AIA example. We know that AIA is actually right now kind of doing something similar. They actually want to implement kind of the health tracking system to their customer. So we see there's a need. They actually want to do that. So we see that the need is there and we want to capture the opportunity.
So can you go back one slide?
Definitely.
I understand where you come from. Yes, AI is doing the program is called Vitality, to kind of increase the health of the policyholder. Actually, the slide before.
This one?
The key stakeholder, no, your B2, it's
Cool.
this one,
That
okay?
one.
So, in this particular model, you're basically doing a B2B to B2C, okay? And when you do the, insurance to company and company to employee, I assume that you are picking the group insurance policy as your target market.
Yes.
And do you know that, in the insurance business, how much of the revenues that the insurance group policy contribute to their total revenue, and whether they're making money in offering group insurance policy?
Well, we know that for group insurance, let me tell you what I know and see where we are on the same page, and then we can go from there. So I know that for insurance company, they usually have, on average, the health insurance, especially because we're targeting health insurance. Every year they got around $3,600, and I know the profit margin from that is around 7%. So it's definitely not a huge margin. We can see that. The reason that we think that actually this program would help is because the claim, as I mentioned, is the biggest part. So we believe that the claim for the insurance is the biggest part of the insurance cost. It takes 66% of the main cost. So 93% of the revenue is cost, and 66% of the 100% is the claim cost. So we believe that reducing that cost will allow us to give the insurance a much higher margin. Is that kind of what?
And as a company, which is your second B,
yeah.
Why do you think that I wouldn't tell the insurance company to charge me less then? Because you have a better margin now. So at the end of the day, for the insurance company, it will be zero-sum game.
Definitely. So we actually plan to, that actually lead to what we mentioned, the accurate risk-based pricing. So they actually talk about we may be able to reduce the price for some of the companies that have lower risk. Now, the reason that we still believe that would be profitable for us, even if we reduce the revenue, is because of a better risk management. And also, again, go back to the previous slide, it's about the claim. So we see that revenue will decrease for companies that have lower risk, that's for sure. Because that actually depends on what the insurance company want to do. It really depends. But,
can you please go back to the first slide?
This one?
The previous one, I mean, the one just Angel mentioned, yes.
This one.
If you realize the fact that the money spent by the company on this kind of insurance versus the individual consumer spending, this is very different number. That's number one.
Right.
Number two, that according to Angel, that's exactly what the company will do. They will go back to squeeze the insurance company. So, which means that the insurance company will squeeze HKT. At the end of the day, they're not willing to pay for the services, which means that this business model is not sustainable. Why don't you go directly to individual, not go through a company to the employee, but to the mass? Have you considered that?
Yeah, the reason that we don't want to go directly to individual is because previously we see that the individual right now, they don't have the mindset that they need this product. They think that they have like the I am okay mindset, so why would I need this product?
So based on what you said, AIA and also Manulife, they will fail definitely, because right now they go directly to the consumer. Basically saying that use the device, take the step, I reduce your policy premium with a discount. So which means that you think they will fail compared to your business model. This is the question.
Yeah, I didn't really hear the question.
I'm sorry, can you?
Okay. Basically, Manulife, a number of insurance companies, they are going direct to end user.
Okay.
Okay, so you know that for a fact. And they know that the money spending in that market is much bigger than that one. So why don't you go directly to I asked the question, why don't you go directly to the consumer? So you believe that that business model is not as good as yours?
Mikey, I can.
Okay.
We can't say for certain that they definitely will fail, but we think that they're going to face significant challenges marketing that business demographic specifically versus our plan, which is going to insurance holders and then to companies and then to customers. We believe by going through our strategy, we're overcoming some of the hurdles that those companies will face because we are incentivizing them correctly.
So I will continue from where I was. So talk about the risk management. So it again go back to the risk-based pricing, and also better understand the customer would be able to allow us to actually manage the risk better, or allows our insurance company to manage the risk better, because we don't want all our customers to be at high risk. So we'll be able to hedge that risk. The last one I want to mention is the ability to have a continued risk monitoring. So with these data, we'll actually be able to know for example, the blood pressure for every month, and the insurance company can, through those, continuously monitoring the risk.
And earlier you mentioned the companies that have done this, and they've successfully lowered or improved the medical care for their employees. But what's the incentive for the employee to do it? Is it mandatory in your model?
That's a good question, which we actually will address here. So there are actually research showing that the employee, they themselves actually really like the program that involve these kind of health tracking device program. So actually 67% of customers, they really like this program. Now for the remaining 63% of the customer, we believe that one way we can do is for corporate, maybe they can, if they have a reduced cost, they can use the reduced cost to incentivize the customer, but those for us would be more depends on what the company want to do to incentivize their own employee. For us, we focus on how the company would benefit from that, and they can decide what they can do. Does that kind of answer the question? Cool. So actually leading to this, so we also want to talk about why why the company themselves want to do this. So first we mentioned that they have a potential to reduce their premium, because if they have a low risk, they will be able to maybe get a lower premium. So that's one of the reasons, the cost-cutting side. And that's another reason for the company want to buy in. The reason is, as I mentioned, the employee will most likely become more healthier, and a more healthier workforce means that you have a higher productivity in the company.
And it might be speaking a little bit out of my depth here, but I think in some of the more developed markets, a lot of the larger companies self-insure their own employees. Does that concept exist here in Hong Kong, and have you explored that? So cutting out the insurance company as the middleman effectively in your organization,
so you mean
in your business model?
Employee that there's some. So your question is there's some employee who self-finance their insurance plan. Is that
the companies, the corporates itself? Ford Motor Company has 250,000 employees, and they'll effectively self-insure their health plans. Does that construct exist here in Hong Kong?
So the question is more like on self-insuring for the company, if I understand correctly. So I think that also exists in Hong Kong for a portion of it. I don't think it is like something that the whole Hong Kong people use, but that's why we actually, Rachel have one point that we'll talk here about how many people actually insure themselves through the company and how much the company actually insure them. And if you want to touch on it, that would be good.
Yeah, definitely. So I think kind of where the questions are going is how large is the market for this and will it really be profitable? Kind of addressing some of the points earlier. Even though there might not be as much revenue in terms of strategically pricing higher, we'll be able to compensate the insurance providers through the benefits that Michael just discussed and be able to sell them on actually buying into a program like Deliver Health. Understanding earlier that in the past, insurance providers haven't been able to take the leap of faith by proving to them that there are benefits in terms of revenue and benefits in terms of the accuracy of the claims and the cost savings related to them. We'll be able to sell the program of Deliver Health and incentivize them to then take the incentive structure down through their clients and down to affect to other stakeholders such as employees. In terms of the market size that we're looking at now, we want to address both the flip side, so the short-term benefits that you as Eat Smart Health will experience because of Deliver Health, as well as the long-term strategic benefits that we see coming from this program. Looking at the market right now, Deliver Health will enable Eat Smart Health to reach a target consumer graphic of up to 1.2 million end users. This is based on the chart to the left, where you see that currently Eat Smart Health is playing within the elderly population, but by expanding your focus to those individuals who are between the ages of 25 to 64, we're able to capture a larger market that will surpass the elderly population that you're playing in right now. Within this working age population, they're broken down into 3 different types of insurance groups. So we see the group of individuals who currently relies primarily on the public healthcare system, the group of individuals who independently seeks healthcare, and then those individuals who seek healthcare through their business or their employer. And so that top segment of consumers is really who you would be reaching by implementing a program such as Deliver Health. Looking at what this looks like in terms of financial projections, we assumed 3 key things. The first thing that we considered is that each package of technology would be sold for 5,000 Hong Kong dollars. This is your price right now, and it includes the 5 different devices that are currently sold, as well as any data and service support. The second key assumption that we had was that each business has about 25 employees. Now, we understand that this number definitely varies, and we'd be happy to dive into a sensitivity analysis of how this changes the revenue projection. The last key assumption that we made was that there's no current insurance market growth. This is also a variable factor, and through further analysis, we'd be able to capture that market growth in the future. So, based on these 3 key assumptions, we were able to graph the potential revenue that you would receive through implementing a program like Deliver Health. As you can see...
Sorry, what is your assumptions on competition?
On competition, so since there are currently no other competitors moving into the market of providing end-to-end device and data service to insurance providers, we would assume that for the first year at least, no competition exists. Even so, we also analyze competitors such as SmartTone, and looking at competitors such as SmartTone, historically you have outperformed them on the aspects of cost, commitment, and quality. So we want to look at this kind of without considering competitors for the first year, and we'd be happy to dive into further analysis later.
Will customer DIY be one of your competition? Like, all the apps that they can download from the iPhone?
And sorry, to clarify your question, are you referring to customers who can track their own health through things like Fitbits? Absolutely. So customer DIY is somewhat of a substitute or competing factor. I think based on our analysis, the customer market right now in Hong Kong for B2C market, the attitude and the mindset isn't actually there for them to be able to quickly adopt these technologies. Through our program, we're competing primarily with other insurance provider support services, and B2C customer companies wouldn't be a primary competitor in this case.
What's the average cost per policy per individual?
So based on the assumption...
Just in the general insurance industry.
The cost per company per individual. So the average industry-wide premium that individuals will pay is about 3,600 Hong Kong dollars.
And this $5,000 is per year?
The $5,000 is per year. It's for a bundled package, and we're assuming that if a company has, for example, employees use this on a weekly basis, you'd have about 10 employees who could use the packages per hour, 40 work hours in the week, and about 400 employees per package. That's the total capacity of each package that we're doing. So based on that kind of 25 employees per company analysis, we're able to get that down to the revenue that we would get per individual reached in the marketplace. The reason we used revenue per individual is because of past data, we're looking at the number of elderly populations in the current market segment you're playing in, so we wanted to parallel that across to make sure our assumptions were pretty standard to what you're currently doing. So looking at this in the graph to your right, you can see, for example, if you were to even achieve a 4% market penetration rate, you'd be able to drive an additional 10 million Hong Kong dollars in revenue. Now, we understand in the information that we found, we weren't confident in the cost drivers. We would definitely want to consider other things such as the marketing costs, extra sales support, data infrastructure that would come with implementing such a service. But since the service is so similar to what you're doing right now with the elderly population, just with the shift in who you're targeting with it, we wanted to project primarily on revenue, and we'd be happy to address cost drivers in future analysis as well. Looking in the long term, there are also strategic benefits for Eat Smart Health as a firm when it comes to implementing a program such as Deliver Health. We know that the market is moving towards more and more private healthcare insurers. From a government standpoint, the Hong Kong government recently has been working on an act to invest over 4.3 billion Hong Kong dollars in supporting high-risk individuals in private healthcare. And this will last over the next 25 years. As government support increases, so does corporate support. So more and more companies are competing to provide their employees with those health services. So we've seen over the past 2 years alone, a 14% increase in those companies that are supporting medical checkups for employees, and then an additional 16% increase in companies with a focus on employee wealth programs. So as this market grows, we want to position eSmart Health as one of the first entrants in the market to be able to capture that growth and to establish customer trust. What this looks like from a stakeholder perspective is that even though eSmart Health is currently playing in a few select stakeholders, we need to start somewhere. So by moving into insurance companies, we'd be able to expose the end device of eSmart Health to various different stakeholders throughout the process. We see exposure with the end user as well as other stakeholders that insurance providers interact with, so that when those market trends that we just discussed do take into effect, eSmart Health is then able to leverage your existing brand recognition and your existing trust from the end users to be able to capture wider market share and be able to grow into the future. Deliver Health.
On growth, this is still relatively small potatoes for us. It's you know, the size of our business. Even after 13 years, our TV business is still only 10% of our overall revenue. How do we get the scale here to go bigger than this? If this is successful in the next 2 years, the next 24 months, you know, what can we do to really explode the business?
So your question is in terms of how do we kind of expand this across in terms of profit and revenue? Yeah, definitely. So I think the key thing that we addressed in our analysis today is instead of looking in the long term, there are definitely benefits. The most important thing is achieving that 20% return on investment that we're talking about for this investment. We know for the past couple of years, you've had a lot of trouble kind of achieving that return. And so in order to turn around the service and be able to position it and continue funding it into the future, the most urgent question is how do we drive sales compared to our investment? And then in the future, we do think about leveraging it to expand that market and to be able to drive future profit. In terms of kind of directly answering your question, we do see the market growing. We also see a lot of potential in potentially investing in long-term, maybe an analytics arm that will help insurance providers be able to address that. But those are goals that we would like to conduct further analysis on and provide you a long-term outlook on. This is more of a kind of turnaround case for the current operations that are ongoing. So Deliver Health is...
Sorry, how do you define success and failure of your plan?
So success of our plan kind of hinges on the amount of return that you're going to get on the investment in eSmart Health as a service. Based on the numbers that we calculated, we have projected revenue, and we weren't able to get a successful, or excuse me, a confident cost estimate for you. That being said, knowing that the market is larger for eSmart Health's targeting insurance providers compared to the elderly market that you're in today, we can assume that moving forward, you would be able to capture that 20% return on investment and continue funding this program as a larger service within HTV.
As Paul just mentioned, that basically you are just targeting a certain segment, working with the corporation and then with the employee. What is the downside to go simultaneously to the company, but also target to individual consumer at the same time?
Yeah, so looking at kind of who we're really playing with here in the market, we want to prioritize the current operations, both the current operations that you have as well as the new insurance provider. I know that sounds like we're kind of trying to achieve a lot of stakeholders, but in reality, it's leveraging the current services that you provide and reshifting the focus. So in terms of the other stakeholders to consider in this situation, the program will really be able to establish customer trust right now through focusing on insurance providers and prime their attitudes for when the market trend does shift towards greater B2C adoption or other end user adoption of the product. Does that answer your question? Sorry.
Not really. Not really.
Your question is more about like what are the downside of selling both to directly customer and also selling for an insurance company, right?
Correct.
So I can see one downside is the cannibalization. So if they actually get the device from the company themselves, they don't necessarily need to buy
There's no
from us.
cannibalization because I get revenue from both sides. Left pocket, right pocket.
Right.
It's my money.
Yes, so we won't be able to get from both. That is definitely one thing that we look into. But the reason we still think this idea is a better idea is because right now only 5% are actually from direct selling to customer. So we believe that reaching through insurance company, we'll be able to reach much more individual at the same time. And eventually it can probably lead us back to the B2C instead of right now with just 5% through B2C. Is that kind of...
Do you have any social media strategy?
Hi. We actually do have a fully implemented marketing strategy that I'm excited to talk to you about. But we've already talked about CICC and how they were able to achieve success through a similar program. And now to get back to Mr. Ringo's original question about exactly how we are going to make this consistent across all stakeholders, because obviously working with multiple stakeholders does represent a significant challenge for us, aligning values between insurance holders, companies, and employees. But we believe we can do that through a pilot program, and that's what I'm talking to you about right now. And we want to define exactly who we are partnering with that pilot program by looking at key stakeholders. We're currently examining FWD because of your historic relationship with them. We also looked into HSBC.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more about HSBC's Quality Consumer Bank and how do they compare against Citi.
Just to point out, FWD, that's a typo, it's FWD. Additionally, Citibank would be a fantastic partner, and we'd love to look into partnering with them as well. For all of these insurers, the next step would be working with that specific insurer that we choose to partner with and the company that they choose to partner with, and working with them exclusively to develop the profit maximizing points. That's the most claim reduction that they can possibly have and the most cost reduction for the company. We'll be really evaluating that every single week to make sure everything is okay with this pilot program and ending within a year to make sure we have the most
substantial
results.
So you think HSBC is a better bank than Citibank?
Absolutely.
No, I'm just asking. It's just HSBC there.
This is in no way an exhaustive or exclusive list of insurance holders that we're examining. Citibank as well is another that tops the list. That is just an example of potential insurers that we're looking into. And then once this pilot program is over, we'll have multiple statistics including claim reduction, employee happiness, and loss of costs for companies. And we'll be able to filter those down into profit maximizing points that we can use throughout a marketing campaign, which you asked about. This marketing campaign, Deliver Health, is going to emphasize the benefits to all stakeholders because we do realize that is a substantial challenge for us. It is going to be saying that both insurers, companies, and employees can benefit through our strategy. We will be implementing our marketing campaign at conferences. One conference we specifically have in mind is in Hong Kong, May of 2017, an insurance conference for CFOs that will attract a lot of local Hong Kong companies. We'll also be advertising in 5 advertisements for a year in airports that will attract many company executives who are traveling. And then we'll be following through on the interest that these stakeholders have gained through an informational phone call we will leverage through the network that we have built.
Do you really believe the best way to attract insurance companies is to target airports?
I really do, yes. Many executives travel long distances, and through that we'd be able to target them where they travel most. This marketing strategy will be taken throughout 14 months. That's in addition to a pilot program, which will have a midway evaluation point to allow us to make sure that everything is going exactly as planned. And then we will be concluding with a mass market approach. There are some risks we examined, including change management, and if the market doesn't pan out, and I'd be happy to follow through with any questions you have. But now we are going to pass it off to Caroline.
Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. We're really excited to implement this plan, Deliver Health. The medical devices that you provide that proactive health care, that understanding of one's current health state that helps eSmart Health be that superior doctor, to be the proactive healthcare provider, and to understand one's current health situation. So by ensuring the buy-in from all of the stakeholders, by driving towards that 20% ROI, and by growing into long-term growth through a strategic implementation plan, we're excited to see how eSmart Health can be the support system for the superior doctor. Thank you so much.